So it starts with writing, as always. A couple years ago, I was here actually in Portland, Oregon, and I found myself waking up in the morning and writing poetry. And they were very strange poems, and I wasn't quite sure, uh, first of all, what they were, where they were coming from, and why I was writing them, which is, I think, something that artists in general uh, deal with all the time, just because what is it that leads to the creation of new work? Where does it come from? So, and especially for me, since I'm not generally writing poetry, I don't think of myself as like someone who publishes poetry books, for example. I published one long narrative poem called 29 Inches, which was written with line breaks and remixed. The book, which you're probably familiar with, published with the University of Minnesota Press, also is written with poetic line breaks, but I don't think of it as kind of like poetry, even free verse. But these were poems and they were coming out every day and I couldn't figure out why, and they were just there. So I sat on them for a few months. Then later in the year, uh, I was now back in another place that I spend time in, Hawaii, and I started writing something new. And I started writing about artificial, at first, artificial general intelligence. But as I was teasing out these ideas about what an artificial general intelligence might be, I started revisiting those questions about writing the poetry in the previous summer and asking myself, where does it come from? And I realized that there was something kind of potent there that was worth investigating. And in writing about artificial general intelligence, uh, I transformed it into artificial creative intelligence and started asking myself, what does it mean to be an artificial creative intelligence? And I was writing it in another voice. In other words, it wasn't the voice of a scholar, it was the voice of an ACI, like an avatar other. And so now all of a sudden, at the end of my time in Hawaii, I had two kind of, you might call them clusters of texts. One was poetry, and the other was the voice of an ACI, like a persona, a character that I called the ACI, that was doing a kind of self-reflexive investigation of what it means to be an ACI. And in that voice, I was obviously putting a lot of my creativity and thoughts about creativity into what an ACI could be. And so those two worlds started meshing together, those two texts, into what I might call like a kind of a critical media poetics. And I decided that what I was really doing, because the work, as you know, it kind of makes itself over time and invents itself over time. What I was doing was that I was creating a larger project about a future form or a speculative form of AI that I'm envisioning as an artificial creative intelligence that investigates its own ability to psychically and automatically generate new forms of art that automates the creative process. And so then that led into the development of the other aspects of the project, which we can get into, which is the 3D avatar, the voice cloning, the performance captures, etc., so that you end up with this, let's call it metafictional doppelganger, modeled after Amerika, that goes by the ACI that I now engage with and interact with in live performance, but also through my own research and theory that's going to appear in the book titled My Life as an Artificial Creative Intelligence, which will come out in the spring as the initial title in the new Sensing Media series at Stanford University Press.